Good afternoon, it's Lee Cassidy from Tactile Technology. I've normally actually preset my video so it comes on automatic at the end of the 30 seconds. I was looking at a blank screen for a second there, so it caught me out a little bit. So here we go with our hot seat. So we have in the hot seat usually once, if not twice a week. This time we've actually got it twice a week. So we've actually had John Andrews on Tuesday, and today we've got Dan Hoff-Rodrigues. So we'll bring in Dan. How are you?
How you doing, Lee?
So we kick this off like we briefly spoke to you before we kicked off. Is a little bit of background. So tell us a bit about where you grew up, your parents, what they did for a living, what you thought to do, when you actually joined the job market yourself, and what actually happened. Because commonly it's not the same. So every train driver we spoke to never became a train driver or a pilot or a vet. They ended up doing something else. So tell us about your starting point. When you were a child, when you were growing up, what got kicked off there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm based in Birmingham now, just to set the scene. But when I was younger, I was born and bred in northwest London, in a place called Harrow. I'm sure there's a lot of people that know where that is.
Yep.
Based on Winston Churchill, and I came from a very working class background. My parents, my dad was a civil servant. He came from Kenya. My family traditionally from a place called Goa, which is in South India. But we come from very much of a sort of Catholic background. Well, that's relevant, I think, is because when we talk about working class, my dad came here at 21. He didn't really have much in the way of in money. He had to work his way throughout the civil service. So actually, he's retired now, but throughout that time, worked for the civil service, which we've all.
It's strange because a lot of people wouldn't think of the civil service and a job in there being working class. They think of it, as the bowler hat brigade and middle class, in that. But again, I think from a class perspective, things have disappeared anyway, haven't they? We don't have that rigid class system we used to have of working class, middle class, and upper class.
I don't know. It's the way you look at it. I think.
Yeah.
I actually kind of disagree. I think there is a massive class system.
You still think it's there, do you?
Yeah, it is. And regardless of me being a business owner, I think that's it's an irrelevant point. I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, you're a director of a company, that means you earn loads of money. You don't. I think it's a different state of affairs, right?
I can guarantee you don't, unless you work for a very large business that's been very profitable for a very long time. That you earn a lot of money. So it's a challenge, especially when you start a business from scratch, which I'm assuming you did.
Yeah, no, exactly. And look, I think that my point about this is that I come from a working class background, so that means I keep those roots. I don't differentiate on it. And what I mean by that is that, yes, he worked for the civil service, but actually, he weren't on that much money, and he was supporting a family where my mother was effectively what you call it, a working mum, who was at home just grinding, cooking and keeping the place tidy, right? So I think when you grow up like that, you value the things that you didn't have, and so we try to indoctrinate that with our children now, me and my wife, and try to keep people grounded. And I think that's a really important point.
I think so, very much so.
So I don't know how far you wanted me to go, but basically, look, I went to a decent comp in northwest London. I wasn't really an educationalist, if you like. I wouldn't say I wasn't bright. I would say that I had more common sense and initiative than I had that setting of wanting to fit into the mold of the education system as we know it now.
So you were more study of the world rather than study within education.
I would say that I probably wasn't a sheep, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so you didn't follow.
Yeah, I didn't follow, and I've never been a follower. I think when I say this, and I've done this at a couple of talks before, when I've spoken about what I define that is, all I mean is that you're indoctrinated in the education system to follow suit. Let's all get grades A stars. I know it's changed now, by the way, so that's probably me telling my age, but ultimately I wasn't about
Well,
that. No.
I was the GCE days, so it's changed quite a lot since my day.
Oh, hey, look, Lee, all they did was add an S, so it was fine.
Yeah, true.
So, but look, ultimately, I didn't understand it. Everyone had to learn in a certain way. Yeah. And I remember this because my maths teacher, and by the way, just to set the expectation of when I did my GCSEs, it was 2002, just to set those scenes. So, okay, so it wasn't that long ago, but a lot has changed in 20 years, right? So,
Yeah,
back then it was like, well, you're taught this way. If you don't understand it, then whatever, it doesn't matter. We'll focus on the kids that understand it. I remember because we couldn't really afford it, but we found a tutor that was affordable for my mum and dad. And my maths teacher, my mocks in year 10, I got an E, and she said that you need to go down to intermediate. You need to go, which it wasn't even a thing. I think that changed, right? So I knew that I could do maths. It was a forte. I just wasn't taught in the way. So she
yeah,
effectively said, I'm never going to get anything higher. I need to go down to foundation or intermediate, where the worst I could get, so the best I could get was a C, best I could get was a B. And I was like, look, I know I can do better than that. They got me a tutor. Anyway, we pushed back. Long story short, I got an A. In maths, right? And it's because the tutor taught me in a way that I could understand, and that's where
yeah.
I think the education system's broken. But that's another discussion that we probably could kill a lot of time.
Yeah, I can say not everybody learns in the same way,
No.
and I think if you work in education, you've got to actually be able to realise that something's not working and try something different. But not every teacher is capable of doing that. They sometimes just leave you by the wayside because you're not learning the way they want to teach. So
No.
it's a challenge, isn't it, for all of us? And there's a lot of people have other challenges like dyslexia and other things that cause problems. And I remember, we would have children at school because I went to school in the 60s and 70s. I left school back in 1980 after A levels, but it was a very different world then. There was no knowledge of dyslexia and all these other things. So a lot of times you were just seen as being stupid. So they'll just push you one side. Whereas at least now there is some knowledge about some of these issues that people have and ways to actually solve it. But it sounds like you got there in the end with that tutoring. So did you have any particular plans of what you were going to do with yourself at that point in time?
So obviously, coming from a traditional Indian family, they've got big plans for you, right? So
I don't know. I've never been there. So what's the pressure like in a family like that? I've never experienced it.
The pressure meant that I would push back, which was part of the issue with the sheep thing, right? It was like, well, this doesn't work for me. I'm not going to agree. I'm going to push back. So that either makes you disobedient or it makes you a waster, shall we say. And I think that's where, and we'll come on to this, why we do a lot of things with young people, because I feel like everyone has a journey, and it's about giving them the right direction to go in that journey, right? So do you ever watch Neighbours?
Briefly, I think. I'm not really a daytime TV person, so
no. Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose you could look at it like that. I suppose daytime. It was, so we're grown up.
It was early evening, wasn't it? But
it was. But you would have been at work.
I remember my days through the 80s and 90s and into 2000s. You wouldn't get home before 7, 8 o'clock at night. So all those kind of programs are usually finished by then.
Well, I know you interviewed your daughter last week, and I bet she knows all about it. So
I'm sure. I'm sure.
So Neighbours, was it's a really, really embarrassing story, really. But there was this guy that was a bit of a rebel. He was called Toadfish Rebecca, right? This guy, I saw a lot of me in him, and I know he was a fictional character, but ultimately he went on to be a lawyer, and I, for some reason, thought, let's do law. It was that or architecture. In hindsight, I've got no regrets in life, but I think if there was one thing I wish I made a slightly different decision on, was whether I went into law and design, because I'm quite a creative person. You could probably see the Lego in the background. That was actually my son that did that. But we had a lot of creative blood, artists, musicians. That was how I grew up. So that was me though. I did law. I went to Oxford to finish my LPC. after doing my law degree, and that's when my eyes opened a little bit. And this is where, when you talk about the class system and you say that it's slightly disappeared, I think that Oxford is your sort of standard place where class just exists way beyond, how it is. And I used to manage a cocktail bar whilst doing my legal practice course part time, and there was a lot of people that looked down on you. The fact that you worked in a bar, it was like, well, do you want to drink or not, right? It was, and this was a nice bar. It wasn't like, I'm not shooting down Wetherspoons, by the way, but it wasn't like it wasn't a Wetherspoons. It was a high profile bar, and I started to realise that that's what the law system looked like, and that's actually what put me off doing law. And I was never ever, based on my growing up, was ever going to go and fall into that suit again. And again, look, in hindsight, that's why I didn't get into. I didn't follow it through. So I did my LPC. I'll probably have to redo it again. It's probably out of date now if I ever wanted to go back into it. But that was that. And I had a background in sort of sport and coaching football. And I put my CV on the job boards. And funnily, that's how I fell into recruitment, because that's what tends to happen.
So what type of recruitment did you start off in then? Tech.
So IT, and we did a bit of engineering, but yeah, my piece and how it's always been for 12 years now has been tech. And I've always had an interest in tech. Don't get me wrong, I couldn't put together a piece of software, but I was one of those inquisitive people that used to take apart things and used to have cool gadgets and all of that, stayed up to date with it. So I always had a touch point with it. So it also was an interest of mine. So it sort of went hand in hand, really.
So where was that role? Was that over Cambridge, Oxford way, or was that back in London, or was that when you moved up to the Midlands?
No. So when I left London to go to Oxford, it was a case of I never was going to go back. I love the hustle and bustle of London as someone that goes back for the day, not as someone that can live in that. Quite a personable person. Everyone looked quite miserable when I used to work in London, right? So I couldn't deal with the misery. And even my mates that live there now just talk about how they're miserable. So yeah, I'm glad I'm not there now. But
I think it's hard living in London because there's a lot of pressure, to compete with everyone else. And financially, it's not an easy place to live because you need to earn so much more to be able to live a normal life, because the cost of things are so much higher as well, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And look, a lot of people have moved up to Birmingham in the last sort of 6-7 years from London because of the cost of living, wanting to bring up a family. You can't get much for your money when it comes to, say, properties or that cost of living. So that says a lot. So then I went to Bristol, and that's where I got my first job in recruitment. So I moved to Bristol, to answer your question the long way around.
So how did you end up in Birmingham then?
Well, the missus, basically.
Same here. I ended up here because of the missus as well.
Yeah, it's that was that. So I decided to uproot. It made sense as well. We've been here for 8 years, and the cost of living has slowly gone up because things like HS2, families moving up here. It is the place to be, I think, Birmingham, and you get the best of both worlds, right? You can get to London in less than 2 hours, soon to be supposedly under 50. You can get to Bristol in about an hour and a half, probably less than that. You've got Manchester, Leeds. You are at this, the centre of the country. But I think the investment in this city is second to none. You've seen that by the Commonwealth Games, the gentrification and the regeneration of certain parts of the city, like Sturtley. I don't know where you're based, Lee.
I'm in Paul Green.
So we're basically neighbours. So I'm in Moseley.
Just up the road.
Yeah. So the investment that's gone into these areas, are really good. And I think that's what has been the attraction of it. And if people watch location, obviously Phil and Kirsty aren't lying. So it's.
I find it a great place to live. I've been here was it 27 years now, I think it is, because I was actually at RAF Cosford, because I was in the RAF at the time, and I met my wife while I was there, and we bought a house in Yardley Wood, so not too far from where we are at the moment, back in 1994 when we moved here. And it was nice to have a city that you could actually walk across and you get into and out of quite easily, but also you could be in the countryside quite quickly as well. And if you want to travel anywhere except to Norfolk, you've got a motorway or some way of getting there fairly quickly. Not that many people need to go to Norfolk very often, because unless you're going on holiday, because there's not exactly a lot over there, is there really? But
no, it's not the easiest place to get to, is it?
No,
the
A14 was a nightmare every time I've been along it.
I think the big part about Birmingham is that people turn their nose up onto it, right? It's a concrete city and all this stuff. And actually, a lot of my mates, I'm sure there's some listening today or watch this back, is they judged it. Everyone thought it was a terrible place to live, and actually, the more people have come here and seen it for what it is, there's a lot of people changing their opinions of it, and I think that's important. And I think that's where investment in a lot of tech companies is changing, and I hope it will continue to change. We've got Gymshark here, so hopefully that silo's changing.
Yeah, because if you walk through the city now, it looks so different. Especially like Chamberlain Square and going through, onto where the new library is. It's an amazing look, and the new buildings and everything that's there. But also, we were talking about Tech Week earlier. The amount of tech business that have actually come into the city and been a part of the city over the last few years, not just because of Tech Week, but anyway, new entrepreneurial setups, lots of people working together to support one another in the tech industry. It's been really interesting, being in this space in Birmingham. And I think it's a lot better than any other area around the country for technology as well.
Yeah, I agree massively.
Yeah. So you were working for other people. So when did you get to the point where you actually kicked off your own business then?
Yeah, I knew I was always going to own my own business at some point. It's just like, there's never ever a good time, right? So we've got 3 kids now. I think when we decided to push the button on it, to go back to that point, actually, it took me 2 years to write my business plan. It didn't take me 2 years. It was 2 years of just me going, what's wrong about this industry and how can I make it better? And that's ultimately why it took 2 years. But one page of that 20-page document of my business plan was on numbers. Everything else was on ethos, the customer experience side, and why I wanted to innovate it and change it a little bit because of the way it was portrayed. But yeah, I always knew I was going to do it. I think 2013 was when I knew I was going to do it. It was just, again, it was a timing, but I just didn't want it to be another recruitment agency. A lot of my mates were like, "Oh, so you're going to leave and set up another recruitment business?" I was like, no, it's not. But that.
So did you had a Jerry Maguire movement then, did you?
Yeah, well, I think it was just the case. I knew I was going to do it. 2013 came and I said, "Oh, should I do it here?" And then it realized that wasn't right because I wasn't changing anything. And then ultimately, like I said, it took me 2 years to come up with something that was innovative, that has meant, I'm sure you can see those awards over my head, that have been, we've been recognized. We're only just slightly over 2-year-old business. Should I be getting back-to-back wins of Recruitment Agency of the Year or Recruitment or Talent Solutions Business of the Year? Probably not. But I think people have recognized what we're doing in the market. And I think that's what's probably differentiated us.
So, you said there that there was a lot of things wrong with the industry. Tell us some of the key things you think's wrong about the industry. And my perception is that you're slightly different to me in a business, that I have customers and I have suppliers and I work between the two to make things work. I believe you've got 2 customers. You've got the customer who wants to employ someone. You've got a customer who wants to be employed. So they're both customers. So it's a slightly different scenario to the way we operate.
Yeah. Well, it's harder because you've got 2 people that you need to keep happy. And I think the first thing to answer that question in a nutshell is that CX squared. If you think about algebraic, we go back to maths. CX squared breaks down to candidate experience and client experience. So we're basically saying, you don't have to give us money to give you a customer experience. You can't quite see that. There's a book in that bookshelf. Let's see if I can lift it up a little bit. That book just above there in that book frame is a book where I co-authored a chapter where I wrote about how we changed in an industry renowned for its bad customer experience, the way that people were treated like a piece of meat. You get a CV. A lot of times, recruitment businesses didn't care about the person on that piece of paper. It was like, how quickly can I send it to that business to get an interview? How quickly can I turn that interview and offer into a placement, right? And
what's my percentage going to be?
What's my commission cut? Yeah. And I couldn't deal with that. For me, I was never money motivated. I think that was where I probably failed the most work for these recruitment companies. I was never a top biller, as they call it. There's someone that was earning all this money because I wasn't motivated by it. For me, people came first. I would rather be human rather than, that other side. And funnily enough, I just went out to meet a candidate. That's why I was late coming in, checking in with you pre going live, because I went to go meet a candidate who, we just want to support in the best way possible.
Yeah.
But we ain't going to do it the way that traditionally most recruiters would be. It was like, where can we send his CV and who's going to pay the highest price? And that's what I hated about it, and that's what we started to change on that side.
Okay, so tell us what you do differently then, to change it. So what's different about how CX Squared, approaches things, to make sure that you are looking after the experience of both, the client and the candidate.
Yeah. So our mantra is culture first, community focused. I know the community focused piece is up there. Culture first means that we don't work with any client. A client needs to be able to define what their vision is, what their purpose is, what their values are, and paint that picture to us clearly. And if they refuse to do it because they're too busy or whatever, then we're not interested in working with them, because ultimately we are working in a candidate short market. We always have done in the tech field, but it's probably been more so recently. And so you need to differentiate yourself as a brand. And we do a lot of work on employer branding. We work with companies on hiring strategies. We sit with them on market trends, and we work with them in a number of facets before we even start to recruit for them. So when we talk about employer branding, we're talking about how we differentiate their job descriptions, how we actually differentiate marketing collateral in terms of what it would be to work here, what it'd be like for that candidate to really picture them being in that business before they even get to interview. So we're giving an experience of what that employer brand looks like to that candidate way before they even have their CV sent, let alone that interview arranged. So we want to give them a taste. And then we do a lot of other things. We've got a package service, which we call our sort of CX Squared in-house service, which is our talent as a service subscription model, where basically we are sitting inside high growth tech startups or scale ups as if we are one of their employees, effectively, as if we are their internal talent acquisition team in order to market that brand. And we're working solely for that business.
Yeah, because I think when you come to that culture side of things, that cultural compatibility is quite important. Between organisations that work together, but also between individuals that work with an organisation. You've got to have that cultural compatibility. And I worked for IBM once, and I was not culturally compatible with IBM because it wasn't me. I'm more of a free thinker, trying to think things out of the box and do things that works for the customer. But working for IBM, I was tied in like handcuffed to what I could deliver. So it made it very difficult for me, and I didn't last very long. I was there a couple of years, but I can see that issue between businesses working together from a cultural compatibility perspective, but also candidates who are going there as well. It's got to be the right place for them. They've got to fit and feel a part of it as well. And I think also a lot of people are interested in what the values a business has, and also about how they approach doing business as well. So, a lot of times, you wouldn't be very comfortable working for an organization that doesn't meet your values as well.
No, and I think people forget that, sometimes candidates can be a bit short-sighted. I've got a YouTube channel where I talk about all this stuff, by the way, so I'm not one to not pull punches. But effectively, a candidate doesn't care. There's so many candidates not turning up to interviews these days thinking that's a great idea. For me, if you live in a city like Birmingham, people know everyone, right? And it takes one person to burn a bridge, and suddenly that carries and that goes around. But similarly, it's the same thing on an employer side.
Yeah,
You do a
very much
bad
so.
piece of hiring, you treat a candidate badly, engagement, all of this stuff gets out. But people think, well, it won't get out, or we're bigger than the candidate. It's not, you're not at the moment. And so we've got to navigate this in the right way, where you treat people as humans, you engage them correctly during an interview process, but ultimately you just treat them like you would a friend or a family member. You've got to be kind, and you've got to be human, and that's where we're trying to change that narrative, and make sure that employers are doing things in a right process, in the right way, which isn't detrimental.
And it can affect the brand quite bigly as well. You look at, I mean, it's outside of the tech industry. Look at BrewDog. BrewDog was seen as this wonderful company that were growing really rapidly. They were part of a business for the people, and everybody was supporting them financially and things, and they looked a great company to work for. But then people then start to hear things from the employees, and it wasn't quite the same. The facade was wonderful, but the actual reality was quite different. It was quite an unpleasant place to work. Lots of bullying and things going on in the background, and that started to really tarnish their reputation. And some people are looking to pull financial plugs on them as well. So it's quite interesting. When you see a business, sometimes it's not always the reality, is it?
It's not. And we've been scaling over the last sort of 6 months, and I've found it really hard. I found it hard as a leader. I found it hard from a hiring perspective. I don't claim to be the best manager, and I used to be a football coach, managing 15, 16 players, understanding every motivational aspect of that player, speaking to them before a game, training them before a game day. And that was one of my best traits. And I felt like I've lost all that during lockdown, and I found it really hard to scale. And I'm having pain points that other businesses are having. So at least that way I'm able to share those experiences with them, being able to hash it out rather than going, oh, you're hiring for this, I can get you those people, which is a load of nonsense, and that's where the recruitment industry has got a problem. It's like all the USPs that they used to have, we use the best job boards, we can get you candidates within 24, 48 hours. That's not true, right? That's fathom. It's nonsense. So let's just strip it back before we even talk about a job description and a person that you're looking to hire. And let's talk about how we can turn your business into a brand, into a story, and then take that to market in order to actually find you the right people. So hire for attitude, recruit for skills is my mantra on that side.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, the experience for both parties is really important through that process, but also afterwards, when they actually get to know one another and work together, because you want longevity, don't you? You want people to be there for a long time, because each time, if you're recruiting over and over again, it's there's something wrong. You're either looking for the wrong people, or you're actually selecting the wrong people for the organization, and it comes down to them. And the recruitment company, I think, are at fault in that respect, aren't they? Because the candidates don't really know much about it. They're just trying to sell themselves, to get there. I do see a lot of problems with recruitment. Some of the organisations I deal with, it's more on the sales and marketing side. I tend to work with a lot of organisations, but you see a lot of people in there on, like a guarantee for 6 months, and then they're gone after the end of the guarantee, and it seems to be like churn all the time in that space as well. So a lot of people are very good at selling themselves, but not very good at actually delivering once they've actually got the position. I find.
Yeah, I think that's the same in anything at the moment, and I think people are trying to put more sort of contingencies in place through the process, tech tasks. But the reality is that happy people make happy customers. So, everyone's got to be accountable. And I think the problem is if they did degrees, right, in hiring and interviewing, maybe we could get better at it. But no one's good at it.
True.
A lot of people that people bring into these interview processes have never interviewed a person in their life, let alone, they might have a few experience of it. But where's this sort of document that says this is the best way to hire someone? There isn't.
No, I've over the years, I've done a lot of recruitment, for the business I've been at or my own business. And my 4 things I always look for is, can the person do the job? Will they do the job? can I work with them? Can the team work with them? That's been my thing I've always looked at. And I've always been very realistic about what people put in their CV and what the reality is. Because commonly, a lot of people I'll work with, they'll say that they specialize in networking. And then I can ask one little question like, what does, a particular thing mean within networking? And straight away, I know they don't know anything about networking. They just think they know about networking. That's sometimes a difference. What's on a CV is sometimes what they perceive as not knowing. In a reality, they don't really know a great deal about it, because all it is they may have clicked a few buttons, to configure something, or they know you have to put this in there, but they don't know why you put that in there. But that doesn't mean you know anything about networking.
No, look, it's difficult. There's a lot of people, especially you think about the junior market or entry level markets, where they're trying to get their first sort of foot in the door. People are desperate. People need support. They need help, and they need to get these. They need to get a job, and this is why there's a lot of boot camps in the tech industry at the moment, coding, cyber, cloud. But what I think some of the these local authorities are more interested in is the money and the kudos that they get from supporting these communities that need help. But yeah, what about trying to really focus on getting every one of those people a job? How about we put more energy in that side? And that's what really gets my I've got to be in a bonnet about, because I don't think enough energy is put in the right facets of that side of the.
It seems to be sometimes it's a tick in the box activity. Yeah, we've done something for that community. We've done for that geographical area. We've done that for that particular vertical market. It's not actually doing anything that's actually creating something at the end that's actually of value, is it? Sometimes it's just doing it for the sake of doing it. And look, we've helped. How have you helped? You've not actually generated any new jobs. You've not created a new industry. You've not done a great deal other than you've done something on paper that looks like you've done something.
Yeah, completely agree.
So a couple of things on the recruitment side then. So, I do quite a lot of work around the newer technologies like containerization, Kubernetes, orchestrator, those kind of stuff. Are they the areas there are a lot of jobs coming in, or is that still slow in that space? Or
No.
You mentioned cloud, because cloud means so many things to so many different people. What are the key areas from a cloud perspective that people are looking for employers, for candidates?
Well, look, I think if we think about for me, the top three things that are massively up there at the moment are cyber. When I talk about cloud, I'm talking about DevOps, automation, all the way that we're, how data's hosted, which then links into cyber. And then obviously you've got your devs that are needed more than ever. But I think that if you rewind to, and I talk about the education system quite passionately, is that we moan that we're not getting enough graduates coming out of university job ready, or they're not ready to hit the working world. Why aren't they? Well, there's two facets to that. We're not empowering them enough to work on their soft skills in terms of confidence, self-esteem, communication. But more importantly, they're paying all this money a year and then being taught stuff that's so outdated that what the hell is the point in them doing it in the first place? And yet we wonder why people aren't going to university.
You've hit the nail on the spot, I think, because I've been to a number of colleges and schools and looked at what they're teaching over the years, and commonly they're teaching stuff that's 4 or 5 years out of date. I remember going to a school and they were talking about physical servers when it was a world of virtualization and hypervisors, and they weren't talking about any of that. They weren't talking about how you segment storage across virtual infrastructure and things in those days. Now we're into this cloud native world and cybersecurity and things like that. And again, nothing like that's been taught at the moment. It's really, really basic stuff. And I think, there's two things. I think some of the people who are teaching it don't really understand it themselves. And secondly, whoever's actually coming up with the actual set of skills that they believe are required aren't quite right. They need to talk to the industry more and get a better picture of what people really need.
Yeah, this is it. And what's funny is that there's employee engagement teams in these universities that are trying to engage employers to hire their people, to hire the students. A bit like, I suppose, mini recruitment agencies, I suppose. But yet how much research is going into what's going on in the curriculum. It feels like there's just pockets of people doing their own work. This is what they're here to do, but not actually talking to each other. But I think that's exactly what the issue is with Birmingham. We moan about not having enough investment in startups and scale ups, but yet what are we doing to join those dots? What are we doing to bring everyone together to start talking about what's going on? And I think that's where there's a massive fault. Everyone's just butting heads with each other, trying to do the exact same thing, reinventing the wheel. But what we just need to do is probably have a conversation.
Yeah, that's it. But I think it's hard for a lot of people then, because they've been taught skills that aren't really required anymore. They go for jobs and they don't understand what the job requirements are. And I think also perception of IT is a bit weird, because anybody I say I work in IT or technology, they think I fix PCs. Well, that's far from the truth. And also, IT is so wide, isn't it? And so deep as well. There's so much in there. And because people don't see it, they don't understand it. So, majority of like this infrastructure we're using at the moment to deliver this stream is not PCs on people's desks. It's cloud-based or private cloud infrastructure that's got software that's developed and deployed in an agile development manner and deployed in microservices, which is a modern way of doing things. And it is quite different, and people don't really understand it. All they do is they pick up their device, commonly these days it's going to be a tablet or a phone, and they consume content. They have no understanding of how that content is dispersed, through the ether, through these technologies that we utilize.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's just it is difficult, but I just think this is why expectations aren't being managed. We get a lot of university students graduating and being told based on this degree you can earn 35,000 coming out of university. Utter nonsense. But then from an employer point of view, we're moaning that, you can't find people. So something's got to give, and, ultimately we've got to look at things. And there's a university, I remember I delivered my first ever keynote back in, January 2020, just before COVID. And I delivered this keynote, and there was another speaker after me from Northeastern University. And Northeastern University is in Boston, in the States, and they've been delivering blended learning degrees, for like decades. So 6 months theory, 6 months placement, 6 months theory, 6 months placement for 3 to 4 years. I mean, it's not brain science, is it?
No. And that's, we used to have sandwich courses. Do you remember those donkeys years ago?
Well,
where people went to college. But the idea was you took some learning, you went to work in industry with it for a year, you came back with an experience of actually working a job, and then you went to the next level with it, and you could build on that experience and that knowledge as you went along. And it sounds like the University of Northeast have got the right idea about it, and they're taking the right plan to make sure that individuals not only learn the theoretical, but they can put it into practice. But that tighter connection with industry will mean that the gap is less between what they think people want and what they actually want.
I mean, for me it works, and I think it's just how can we change a system that has been so archaic for so long? I think that's the problem, and no one likes change.
Okay, so what about telling people the kind of businesses you want to deal with? You said before it's all about the experience from the candidate and also the client's perspective. So what type of organizations would you be keen on talking to about helping them recruit the right candidates and make sure it's successful?
I mean, look, just to reiterate, we don't just do recruitment. So if you want some help with that, we can do that, but we do all sorts from diversity and inclusion training. We can come in and help with your marketing your culture through video marketing. We've got a whole partner network which supports in leadership development through to social media management. So we can help with the whole, what I call full service. But the sort of businesses we want to speak to, the ones I suppose that really embrace cultural change, that want to evolve and develop a culture, but also have got a really good story that they want to bring in good people. And for us, that's really important. And if you want to get involved in some community initiatives, then, you know, even better, because we do a lot of work going into schools and helping young people from all walks of life, from deprived areas of the city through to not deprived areas of the city, to seek a career in tech, as you touched upon earlier, Lee, isn't just about fixing a computer or doing coding. Like, there's more to a tech company. You know, you touched on sales and marketing. There's things that are non-tech in a tech company. So we do a lot of work going into those sort of environments to say, look, you don't have to be great at maths. You could be a great people person. You know, there's jobs as business analysts, project managers. You know, there's all these different opportunities in tech that we want to help shape for you. So we do a lot of size on that as well. So any businesses that maybe want to scale, you don't even have to scale. It could be businesses that just need some help with a bit of pain points and engagement of their own current workforce. Well, we can help with that as well.
Okay. And one thing I've seen with a lot of organizations, not just tech organizations, others, they don't really have any technical strategy about technology for their business. They tend to be very tactical, or we need to buy this, we need to buy that, and just buy whatever there is or cheapest at the time, rather than having a bit of a strategy to it. So that's something I'm trying to do, is work with a lot of organizations to look at, you know, like a CTO type thing, so people can understand what they should be doing strategically for the business, rather than just rolling on forward way they did it before and not having any strategy at all. So coming up to the community stuff, there are a couple of things we talked about earlier that you were doing in the community, which I think there was it Smart Brum and there was another, the Smart Muse, was it?
So we've got the so we've got two. So I run another company called the Brum Muse. So that's our initiatives where we go into schools, work at young people. We bring tech companies, tech folk, non-tech folk to them to get them to see opportunities. And then we've got an event which is in partnership with Innovation Alliance West Midlands and my company CX Squared, called our Smart Brum, where bi-monthly we meet together. It's hosted by Bruntwood SciTech, and you know, the tech meetups, I'm sure you've been to enough tech meetups.
I've been to a few in the past.
For me, very siloed, very exclusive, depending on who they're obviously tailored to, but we wanted to create a tech mashup, so it's non-exclusive, but our audience is, we always go for a 60% turnout who are young people. So last week we had our second event. It was at the iCentrum, and we had 12 companies that were in the sort of sustainability, smart city, IoT, blockchain, 5G, AI space, who came and showcased their tech to young people. You know, it was a humbling experience, because this was everything I wanted to do. You know, a lot of people said to me, "Oh, another tech meetup. Go and see like the other ones that are doing it." I was like, it's not like all of those tech meetups. And, you know, the feedback we got, the people that turned up, the feedback from the young people, which was far more important to us, was just, for me, it was life-changing. I'm not saying that from a corny or cheesy point of view, because that's what I set up to do. You know, when I said community focused, that's what it was about. It's about bringing the community together, getting people to talk to each other. There's opportunities for people to network from a B2B point of view, from an investment point of view. But for us, it was about the young people. And that's what our Smart Brum is about. Birmingham wants to be a smart city by 2030. Yet we're not doing enough work with the young people who are going to be at the driving seat and the helm of that come 8 years' time. So that's why we did it. And you know, it's working well. And the Brum Muse is a separate company. It's a CIC, purely because the amount of haters I had out there going, he's doing it to get leads in for his recruitment business, you know, all this was just basically, you know, my middle finger up to them. basically.
Yeah.
So we keep.
There's always naysayers, and there's always somebody who's going to knock you for what you do because they think you're doing it for the wrong reason. But I think what it is they would have been doing it for the wrong reason, and that's why they're thinking that. It's just looking at themselves, and how they would be doing it. A lot of times you've got to do things. I've been involved in youth organisations the last 12 years. I work with the RAF Air Cadets, so I run one of the squadrons in Solihull, 492 Squadron. So I've been doing that since October, but we've had some great leaders before that, Marion Aitken, Elliot Heames, and everybody's contributed a lot of the time to look after other people's children, and we have quite a lot of them. We've not got as many at the moment. We've got about 40 or 50, and we parade in about 35 to 40 most of the time. But in the past, we would have 65 to 70 always there. And our view is to focus them around aviation, because a lot of people are very interested in aviation. So it's related to the RAF for the aviation side of things. But our big drive is to give them confidence, help them with leadership, help them understand how to work in a team, how to be able to present information and communicate effectively. And they're the key skills that we drive them. And majority of our kids, they come in at between 12 and 13. So the year 8, age 12 in year 8, they've got to be as a minimum from this insurance perspective. And then we give them all these experiences and all this guidance and leadership. And then eventually they leave us at 18 to 20, and they're very different people. They've actually got a really rounded personality. They understand the world a bit more. They actually can step out into it and actually contribute, which I think is a big thing as well. And there are a lot of people doing that completely free. We don't get paid for it. We don't get anything out of it other than we use up around about 8 hours of our week every week, being involved in it, for a very, very long time. And I think, I think anybody in the community does anything for children to help them, get better opportunities, for their lives and get better experiences, and also give them that capability to be able to move on and make something of themselves. I think it is a real thing that we should be applauding, not knocking because, he's only after, more candidates to be able to recruit and make more money out of it.
Yeah, well, it goes back to my point. I earn probably half as much as I used to working for, other people. It isn't about that. I've got 3 kids under 6. They're the future of whatever we're doing at the moment. And if we're not empowering them, then what's the point? And there's so many businesses that use CSR as such a marketing stunt. We give a certain percentage of our profits to a charity. That's great. That's really good. But they're probably just cushy, sitting at home, happy to do it. I'm like, well, I would rather give back time to go back and to go out, and I don't want anything in return if it's going to help people. And that for me is far greater. I'm not going to be Batman anytime soon, but if it's probably the closest thing I am to Batman. So
does somebody shine the light in the sky and you've got to come?
See it squared, literally in the sky. Yeah.
Well, it's been great having you on today, and it's been really interesting because it's nice to. I feel a bit, similar because I've always had this thing of being different and being less ordinary. And my theme tune from have you ever heard? Tyson, it's not Batman, it's Spider-Man. One of the films, there was a theme tune that was used there by Train called "Anything But Ordinary," and I've always felt myself being anything but ordinary. And most people know me; I'm not quite ordinary in the way I approach life or anything I do. So you sound like a very similar person, that you're trying to make other people's lives better. You're trying to commit to be different, because you don't want to be a follower. You don't want to follow like a sheep. You want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. So it's been great talking to you in that respect. I did prime you beforehand a couple of questions. So the first one is, what's the best meal you've ever had? What was it? Where was it? And why was it the best meal you ever had?
Do you know what? I didn't get a chance to even think about it. But literally on the top of my head, I will tell you that my nan, and this is just because I went to talk about Chamberlain Square yesterday. If anyone gets a chance to go to Dishoom, I had a client take me.
Excellent place.
Yeah,
excellent
they do
place.
A lamb samosa. They also do a vegetarian version, but the pastry that was in brought brought back memories to my nan, who unfortunately is suffering from dementia now, and she can't make these samosas with lamb meat inside, and it literally was the closest thing that I had to me being back in my childhood. I know it's not a proper meal, but it just brought back that nostalgic feeling, and obviously with what she's going on at the moment, it just touched me a little bit there.
Yeah, I think I was talking to John Andrews on Tuesday about food, and we were talking, and also previously Manny, one of the people we had on, and a lot of things about food ties us to a point in time, like history, for a reason. We associate things that we've done and experiences through food, and similarly with music as well. That ties us to a point in time as well, doesn't it? So really good. But anybody who's not been to Dishoom, go there. It's great. I've been a Dishoom visitor for many years, because I used to, every time I was in London, I go to one of the ones in London. There's one in Shoreditch. They're all over the place, and there's about 4 or 5 in London I've been to, but really good. I love the breakfast. I don't know if you've been for the breakfast. So nothing like a wrestling naan, just get you going in the morning. So a fresh naan with a spicy tomato sauce and bacon, sausage and egg in it, really kicks the day off. But really great place for food, and they really look after you, which is really good. Indeed. So the second thing was, what's the most adventurous thing you've done?
Yeah, it's do you know what, it's difficult. Like again, I think this is a recent thing, and it's just been walking. I hated walking. I'm a city boy, so when my missus is very rural, so we've started to do more walks on the weekend, and we've committed to a walk every weekend in 2022. So far, with touch wood, we've committed to it, but it's so good for just thinking space. And I know it's not really the most adventurous thing. Probably people probably that's boring, but I
said earlier that adventurous is about how you put yourself into outside of your comfort zone. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be scary or very high or very fast. It's what is different, that you've done that's put you outside your comfot zone, really. Have you got a dog?
I don't, and the kids.
That's an idea.
But what? Ideally, it's a terrible idea,
because it means you've got something to go walking with on your own.
Of course, I've got 3 kids, Lee. That's
so you've got kids to walk instead.
Yeah, exactly, and they are like walking dogs. So I'll hope the RSPCC.
My children are now in their 30s, and they've got children themselves, so it's slightly easier for me. So we have got a dog instead to walk. So, but
maybe a poo wonder.
Yeah, but thanks ever so much for joining us today. It's been great. We've been putting some banners up about the business as we've gone along. So please have a look on the website. Look at the LinkedIn profile as well. Reach out and speak to Dan if you've got any requirements and you want to speak about this alternative approach to actually working with an organisation and this culture and compatibility and the experience, but also an ability to get much better candidates as you would normally do that are going to stay with you because they want to be with you and be a part of what you're trying to do, based on your business. But also, outside of that, it'd be great to see more of what you're doing in the community as well for young people. So I think that's a really important thing to do, and not enough people are doing it at the moment. Also, next week we've got Katja Mullins on the Tuesday, and on Thursday we've got Mike Dingley from Black and Gold. So join us for that as well. And if you're also interested in joining us, make sure you let us know. Or if you don't know anybody, Dan, just let us know if they want to come along and experience it. Rachel and my email are on the screen now, so use those details and contact us and join us on a Tuesday or a Thursday and tell us about your journey as well. So if you could stay with us afterwards, and we'll just have a quick wash up once we've actually shut things down, and then we'll catch up with everybody next time. Thanks ever so much.